Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Smart Trucking Live. Glad you could all join us this afternoon. Trucker Hershey is here. Hello, Hirsch. How are you doing? Glad you could join us. Fred Besmer is here, trucking through God's country, Wyoming, on his way back. Bloody Dead's here. I'm gonna address a question you had in a second there, Bloody Dead, because I wanna talk to you about it. But Jay Kearney is here. Little Trucker Bear is here. Welcome. Roger Penske. Hey, man, how are you doing? How are you making out with your issue there at the carrier? Craig Beats is here. Glad to see you all joining us today. Just I was feeling your pain there, Bloody Dead, when I read your question earlier about how long the truck is taking. I feel your pain. It's never fast enough. Now, I've never had to do that myself with the truck. But my friend the Lettuce King has done numerous builds, and he's done them all by himself. And, because they're for him, he's always in a rush to get them done because he wants the truck as soon as possible. Because often after he's finished building one and he drives it for a couple months, someone will offer him big bucks for it, and he sells it, and then he's without a truck. So he's always in a hurry to build these trucks, or he has been. And I would have to say, on average, him doing it himself and being in a rush, his were usually a couple years before they got on the road. Mind you, he did everything. He had it down to the frame rails. He installed the transmissions, relocated the cab and the hood. He did it all. And, hopefully you're not into that much work, but it took him like a couple years to finish a build. And I know it can be a long wait. And, I don't know how well you know the guys at the shop where the truck is, but unless they're good friends with you, you're not their first priority. So it's really frustrating. I feel your pain, man. I feel your pain. I just want you to know. Trucker Hershey was asking there about the convoy. I was curious to see how this would go, this convoy, because the border issue down there is a huge deal. It's a big thing. So you could see a lot of people getting involved in it because a lot of people have a sentiment one way or the other on how they feel that should go. So I've been watching every live feed I can find, but so far I've got to say that just from what I've seen, this trucker convoy is basically a convoy of pickup trucks and a couple of motorhomes. I haven't really seen it. When I say truck convoy, I think of like 18-wheelers. I haven't seen any evidence of that with this convoy at all. I've seen pickup trucks mostly, and not very many of them even. So I don't know if this is going to even fly. But I'm a little offended, frankly, as a truck driver, that it was touted many times in their literature and on their website that this would include Canadian truckers. And I think of truckers as being 18-wheel guys. So I feel like they're almost misleading the public. I don't think there's any Canadians there at all. But they wanted to say that there were going to be Canadians because they knew what Canadian truck drivers were capable of after what happened up here in Ottawa. So they're kind of using that, and they're kind of using the 18-wheelers, only there are no 18-wheelers. So I don't know. Maybe it'll develop yet, but so far looks like it's kind of a soft dud. So anyway, that's how that's going. Hey, Muppet, how you doing, man? John Kirkland, Joe, Inthanu. Sorry if I butchered that. Welcome all of you. But it's I don't know. I'm taking the wait and see attitude because I do think they should secure the border. But I just don't think this convoy is going to make a whiff of difference by the look of it now. And the only other thing in the news is that we talked about last week about the head of the FMCSA had resigned, and I think I mentioned at the time that this would push everything back that they'd been working on, and including the speed limiter mandate, which was what everybody was waiting to find out about. Everyone was holding their breath, and now they've pushed it back. Well, recently this week they've announced that there won't be a decision made on the speed limiters or the emergency braking systems or any of that till at least May, was their phrasing, at least May. So they're not even drawing a hard line at May when they'll start working on that stuff again. But what was noticeable in the literature and the announcements that the FMCSA put out was that there was no mention of the load broker transparency that they were supposed to be working on. And all of a sudden, all sorts of people in the trucking industry started to scream, because that's a big priority for an awful lot of truck drivers. It sure would have been one of mine had I still been working down there. And so they've added now to the announcement that yes, they're still going to work on the broker transparency thing, but it's almost like it was an afterthought, and they were going to wait to see how many people screamed before they said, oh yeah, we haven't forgotten that. So anyway.
The buddy dad coming in with a $5, I would do it myself, but because I'm saying a company driver, I have no experience. My boss wants the pros to take care of it.
Yeah, and I can understand that. And I was, like I like trucks and I know my way around trucks, but I was no mechanic by trade, and I couldn't have done half the stuff that would have needed to be done on a build like that. But yeah, it's just, you just kind of bide your time. And the most important thing is that the guys take the time to do it right. You don't want them messing it up because they're in a rush or using apprentice mechanics or something like that. You just kind of got to wait. Roger Penske, there was a previous attempt by the Mexicans to have a company drivers meeting, and as I've said, the American Mexicans are all in. The Mexican Mexicans need some leadership. Oh, that's interesting. And you'd know being down there in Arizona. So, interesting stuff. But yeah, I don't know. But on to the topic of today, diversity in the trucking industry, and no one can deny now that there's more diversity than ever in the trucking industry. And to be honest, I have to say that I think the diversity has hurt the industry to a certain extent. But I want to qualify my statement, because nobody's skin color bothers me. I don't care about skin color. It's got nothing to do with race or skin color or any of that. But what I find is the lack of skill in some of these diverse groups. And I don't know whether you can attribute that to lack of proper training or mental attitude or what. But yeah, certainly diversity now, the industry is very diverse. That's part of why like a trucking convoy would never work anymore. There are so many different groups in trucking. It's so diverse that you could never get anybody all together. Maybe back in the 60s and 70s, yes. I don't think it'd be possible these days. So, but I like I say, I don't think it's got anything to do with race. I think at the end of the day, it's got to do with the training or the lack thereof, and that has created a problem, and in return, that has created a bad reputation for some of these groups. But
the buddy dead with another $5. My other problem is limited to where I can get this done semi-casually. It doesn't do interior work. And another body shop would just be complicated. Yeah, no, I hear that too. Huh. Yeah, I guess you're just gonna have to try to put it out of your mind. It's right now with the weather this bad, you don't want to bring out a fancy truck in this weather anyway. So just don't even sweat it until May, till the roads are decent again. But yeah, I know I feel your pain. Oh, I know that frustration. I have myself seen no issues with diversity. This is Laverne. But the lack of training is ridiculous, especially going to BC. And that's interesting about British Columbia, too, because it turns out that most of the provinces now have joined this MELT program that Canada has, and that ensures better training for new truck drivers. And BC's got one of the best training systems on paper, and they even do mountain driving and stuff like that. But I know, yeah, it's scary to drive a truck in BC anymore. Hell, it's scary to drive a truck on the 401 in Toronto. If you can drive a truck and you speak English, I have no problem with that. That's from Evan. Yeah, it all boils down to if you can drive a truck, and I don't have a problem with any of them if they can drive a truck.
But if they can't drive a truck, that's where I start to have a problem. Stabs, as long as you know you do your job well, it doesn't matter what skin color, gender, or orientation you are. Some of the things you just can't do, but go all in for what you were good with. Yeah, I agree. It's got nothing to do with anything except skill level, frankly. And it just seems though that the crashes are accelerating, and I don't know. The accident rate was up again from the statistics for 2022 just came in, and another 5.7% more truck drivers died in 2022 than in 2021. It takes them like a year to catch up with the statistics, but a lot of that is because of these new drivers, and this is part of what this ELD was supposed to prevent. And since the ELD has come in, the numbers are going the other way. It may be causing more accidents. Let me get Wolf Train here.
Bloody Dead, thank you for another $5 and just agreeing on the drivers who don't speak English.
Yeah, appreciate that, Bloody Dead. There's a lack of training in today's young driver, but what about the people that are training them? Maybe they don't have the proper training themselves, and they're only giving the new driver. You know what, Wolf Train? I read a statement from the body that organized Melt, and that's in their statement that their drivers are experienced mentors, top quality drivers. But then further down, they state that they've had a problem with. They regulated all these trucking schools to make sure they were qualified to train, but then after they regulated them, the provinces haven't gone in and checked to see if the schools are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, if they're actually, spending the time with the drivers and producing a good product. The government fell down on that, and they haven't checked anything. And that kind of explains a lot of the story too right there. I was pleased to see, Fred, you'll be interested in this, in Ontario, and I didn't know this, that in Ontario has mandated a minimum of 50 hours behind the wheel in driver training. And nowhere in the U.S. do they do that, and I think that's a mistake. And I was happy to see that Ontario has done that. A minimum of 50 hours in cab training behind the wheel. So that's a good thing. But where was I going with that? It's I'm offended that my load didn't route me through Eagle Pass. That's Corey. It might be well to stay away from that. In fact, I think the sheriff down there asked truck drivers not to come in a press statement. So we'll see. I don't think the diversity is bad necessarily. It is the ones that refuse to acclimate. I don't know if I said that word right, but there is a certain amount of that too. They tend to stick with their own group, and if language is an issue, and for a lot of them it is, you can understand why they tend to stick to people that speak the same language that they do. And it's maybe hurts the process of learning professional truck driving, but it's kind of a natural reaction to that. So I've had a couple of instances that tended to color my thinking on diversity in trucking. My first story is I was bedded down in the Petro Pass in North Bay, Ontario. I was headed west. I had nosed into my spot so no one hit the cab of my truck, and I still got hit. A guy backed in next to me and took a chunk out of my bunk while I was in there sleeping. Scared the hell out of me. Woke me right up. I hopped out, and this guy driving the other truck, he didn't even know he'd hit me, but he had no English at all and had a driver's license from Quebec that I couldn't translate. So I called the cops, and the cops showed up, and it wasn't even a valid Quebec driver's license. It was a forgery, basically. So here's a guy with no English, no license, and he's hit me, and now it's in Ontario, so it's pay your own insurance, and I was ticked right off. So that kind of colored me, because like, how can a guy like that get into the country, get a truck and trailer from a company, and go to work? So that was one of my experiences. And the other experience that I had was I was trucking westbound on I-80 in Iowa on a Sunday morning, and the last set of scales in Iowa, that little set in Iowa going west, were open, and the lights were on, and there was traffic, so guys were pulling in, and I got the lights to come in, so I came in. I parked in the parking lot there, grabbed all my paperwork, and walked in, and there's about 3 or 4 guys in front of me. I wait my turn, and when it's my turn, the inspectors, there's a couple of them working the desk. The inspector looks up when it's my turn and looks at me funny and goes, "What are you in here for?" I said, "I don't know. You pulled me in. The lights are on. You pulled me around back. Here I am." He goes, "What truck are you?" I said, "The blue Pete flat top pulling the reefer with the spread." He goes, "Ontario plate?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, really? Okay." He says, "No, we've been pulling in Ontario plated trucks because the trucks now out of Ontario, we're finding the drivers can't speak English, and that's illegal in Iowa to run a commercial vehicle, a truck, on the interstate if you can't speak English. But we're catching a lot of them, so we're checking Ontario trucks." And he gets talking because he gets laughing about it, because it's kind of a goofy thing to him, and me too. Something I never thought of. But he says, "You know what we do is we bring them in and we check their paperwork, and then we'll give them an English test." He says, and we'll use phrases like, "Are you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs?" And if they just grin and nod and smile and say yes, yes, and that's their response, we know we've got a problem. He says, and you wouldn't believe how many of them just, or they'll say, "Your mother wears army boots." Just any goofy phrase they can think of to check to see if the guy's got English or not. And it's it was kind of embarrassing, but he said we get all sorts of them with Ontario and Quebec plates, so that's why we pulled you in. So kind of gives you a perspective on the problems with diversity in trucking these days. I'm way behind on my comments.
Jonathan coming in with a 5er, "It really grinds my gears when these so-called truckers look at me dumbfounded when I ask them, is that a 13 or an 18? Too many auto-restricted drivers."
That's a whole other topic. But if I was the leader of the FMCA, what would be your requirements for new truck drivers to be qualified on the road? Well, English, a good command of the English language, a knowledge of the equipment, of the rules, time training, like months training, not 5 or 6 weeks with a guy that ran team with me, had 3 months experience. The U.S. requirements, I think, are ridiculous. And the Ontario and Canada has tried to put in better requirements, but everyone seems to be able to get around them. So I don't know if it's done any much more good or not. I don't think so by the look of it. Trucker Hershey. So 700,000 pickup trucks? No, Hersh, like maybe 40 pickup trucks. Like it's not a big deal. Chromehound, good afternoon from Massachusetts. Hey man, how are you? Glad you could join us. Little Bear, false advertising. Yes, it kind of is.
You're about 15 minutes behind.
I'm so far behind, my boss has told me to scroll it up here. Roger Penske says, everyone is legal, though. It's sad but true, but not necessarily qualified. Did he say what percentage can't speak English? He said most of them. Most of them with Ontario, Quebec plates couldn't speak English. That's not a sad statement. Here's Fred. It's already a law about speaking and reading English in the U.S., but the law is not enforced. Yes. But Iowa, Fred, they were doing it that day anyway. But yes, I do know that. I guess it's not a law in Canada. You can try for your license in something like 20 different languages, but not in the States. Here's Kevin. Check out the story of the Massachusetts state cops selling CDL licenses. I saw that. Yeah, it's I saw that. They've arrested those cops. I think there's 4 of them just taking bribes and passing out licenses. I guess there's ways around it everywhere. Here's Stubbs. Had a few trucks from Eastern Europe to ask something with broken English. Nothing that little bit simple English and a few hand gestures couldn't solve. Yeah, sometimes even if their English is really bad, you can manage to communicate with them. But that's as far as the scale inspectors and I were concerned, that wasn't cutting it for them. That they needed a good command of the language. Fred says Ontario, 32 different languages last time he checked that you can write your ticket in. That's just crazy. Roger says the Mexicans are good drivers. Man, I like anybody that's a good driver. And now that you mention that, I've never seen one that couldn't or wouldn't. I don't. I didn't encounter a lot of them, but when I'm in Laredo or Arizona, sometimes I would. But yeah, all of those guys were fine. So, but I think, and I don't even know how true this is, but someone told me once that a lot of the countries, these guys wouldn't have even been truck drivers. So they come here and they've never even driven a car before, let alone a truck. And that's part of their problem. They haven't grown up with equipment, any sort of equipment at all. Now, a lot of drivers need math to look at the overpass hits in BC. Yeah, maybe they're not on the metric system. They've had a rash of them out there, haven't they? What was I going on about? Now, I have to say, in all reveal, I worked for a little while with a company called Harmac, and they pull chemicals. They pull serious stuff, and there were a couple of Indian guys there, and those guys could drive. Man, those guys could really drive. They were really good. So it's not a cultural thing necessarily, So I don't know what the problem is. I think it just boils down to training or lack of it. Wolf Train says, I still have to stop and help other truckers. It's just the way I do things. I don't care if they can't speak English. Sure, you'd want to help. And a lot of you've got to feel sorry for some of those guys, because they're halfway around the world in a country where they can't speak the language, and they've got to make money to feed their families. Geez, that's a tough pull. Yeah. So and that's the problem. So how can they read the message boards or construction signs about lane closures or road closures? And that's exactly what I said to the cop in North Bay when he looked at this guy's license and we figured out he didn't have a word of English. I said, how has this guy even read the road signs and done the logbook to get here? How? Because I was mad. There was I think there's about $12,000 damage to my bunk, and I was ticked off. So I was kind of grilling the cop like throw this guy in jail right now. I ended up leaving because I didn't want to hear him get off on it. So, but yeah, that's a valid question, Fred. How do those guys even get across the country when they can't even read the road signs? The Koreans that have been in the USA for a few years gain a lot of confidence. I help everyone in the yard. Good. That's what you call your outfit, the Korean Mafia, I think, is how you referred to them one day. I got a kick out of that. But so I don't think really it's race. I think it's all got to do with training. I heard one journalist one time say that how do we address the elephant in the room was how we phrased it, because all the truck drivers knew that we all thought those guys couldn't drive because they were having all these accidents. That's what brought the MILT program into Ontario, frankly. We were having so many truck wrecks up here with new Canadians that the province knew they had to do something. Bloody Dead says they need this everywhere. And yeah, it's why would you skimp on training having a guy running an 80,000-pound truck that's 70 feet long, 75 feet long. Why would that's like a rolling freight train, the momentum and the damage it could do. Why would you undertrain anyone like that? But, just not as big a priority as it should be for some reason. It's the training and the corruption associated with crooked driving schools, which is the norm in India. There's no doubt that there are some crooked driving schools, and like especially in the Brampton area, like there's just no question of that. But if everybody knows it, if the insurance companies know it, if the MTO knows it, why is it still going on? Like I'm afraid to drive on the roads up here anymore. It's getting that bad.
This is just a fun little fact that I thought I would throw out, and then you can discuss it as you will. Traffic signs are near identical in just about every other country, just for the record. So take with that information what you will.
And that's true, but like look at the weigh scale signs when you go into Quebec. It looks like it's a truck wash the way the sign is. Or look at the guy that killed those people in Denver. He couldn't understand the runaway lane sign or the purpose of the runaway lane when he saw it himself. He was so undertrained he didn't even know what that was. So some people understand the signage or can grasp it. Maybe that guy in Denver grasped it after he'd passed it. I don't know, but yeah, I think the language thing is an issue, and the DOT in the States has made it a requirement, and they've done that for a reason. I hope they continue to enforce it. But JL says it's definitely a culture thing. I think I'd have to agree with him. Fatflex Films, are Cat C15 Assert any good? Heard bad stories on them. The only problem I ever heard with Asserts was if you blew that twin turbo, that was an expensive chunk of money. Like I had one, kept it for a while and ran it. It got really good fuel mileage, and never had an issue with it. But Cat warned me about the cost of replacing the turbo. They said you don't ever want to do that. So, but that's the only issue I ever heard with them. And a lot of guys with the Asserts just ended up getting the kit and putting a single turbo on it, and that solved the problem. Too many new drivers are playing on their phones while flying down the road. Kyle Patterson. Hey, Kyle, I don't know if I said hi or not when you joined us, but that's true. You see all sorts of guys on their damn phones. I don't know why they can't build technology into the cab of these trucks so you just can't get a signal out. And if you need to call, if you're broke down, all you got to do is step out of the truck and you can make the phone call. But yeah, it's a problem. It's a real problem. And they'll talk on the phone like going through Chicago or where traffic's the heaviest. They don't care. They just got to be on their phones.
What if you crash and you can't get out of the vehicle? Just throwing that out there for you.
Oh.
The Bloody Dead coming in with a $10 dono. Other problem is if you remember the immigrant who took multiple Americans' lives in Colorado because they couldn't read the runaway truck ramps. Lives are at stakes because drivers can't read English. Thank you very much for the 10, Bloody.
Yeah, Bloody. That's the Denver crash that I was just talking about. That guy had broken English, but he didn't understand the runaway sign or recognize the ramp when he saw it. That got 4 people killed, as I recall. So.
And Chromehound coming in with a $10 donation as well. Thank you very much for that. It's been a while since you made a funny video. How about a video cooking in the truck as a teen?
Yeah, a video of me burning out the interior of my truck. That would be a funny video. I don't know how hard I'd be laughing, but I go to BC every week at least 4 times, do a switch, and it scares the hell out of me. And I've been doing it for 50 years, hopefully only one more a year. New Canadians need way more training. Yeah, geez. BC of all places. BC not to be able to drive well. God. You can see why I guess they have regular pileups on the Coquihalla every winter out there. I guess it's just a fact of life. I was I was so scared watching some of the videos from the crashes on the Coquahallas. I think if it had been me, I was wondering if the old route that I used to use through Boston Bar and all that was still open. I think I'd go that way if you still could. Texting and driving should be treated as a DUI, curb stomp. That is an excellent suggestion, and I agree with you. It should be. Z-Bear, my dad and uncles learned English. Heck, given my friend's dad, whose main language is Serbian, learned. So I do know it's not about where you come from. If you drive, learn the dominant language. Z-Bear says that. So, I got to say, Z-Bear, I never even mastered French in school. I'm no good with languages. It obviously can be done because I've met all sorts of people that are bilingual and trilingual and that, but I bet you it's tough. And technology is already built into the phones. The texting feature should be disabled when the truck is moving. Yeah, they've got to do something, Fred, because it's out of control. And I think I'm no guy for knowing the phone technology at all, but I think you can even send a text through voice without ever touching the phone. So couldn't they just mount it on their dash and talk at it? I don't know. There's a question. How are guys getting a CDL if they can't read a road sign? Good question. And that's the whole point, Sean. How are they? So they shouldn't be is the point. Fraser Highway's still open, just most companies won't let you go that way. Laverne, why don't the companies want you going that way? Because it's like 2-lane windy road. that was the best thing about it. I used to love going through Boston Bar and looking down at the river. But Sean, I'm new and in school and still, and you have been able to. Geez, if I could read English, I'd be off to the races. I'm new and in school still, and you have to be able to read. Do you have to be able to read English? Can you use an out-of-country CDL here besides Canada and Mexico? An out-of-country CDL. Well, certainly, the Canadian truck license you can use in the States and vice versa. But after that, I don't know. I don't know if a guy can come over here from Britain, for instance, hop in a truck and take off. My impression is that you've got to have your license changed over, and there's some sort of a process you'd have to go through for that. Curb stomp. Ohio treats texting and driving like a DUI. Needs to be implemented throughout North America. I agree. I think that's an excellent solution. And they can tell, even if they pull you over and you throw your phone in the back, they can look at the phone and tell if you've been talking or texting. It's got timing on that. You can read it. Melt is not helping. I'm an instructor, and all the program does is what schools did before. Enough to pass the test, and the worst part is truckers' sons still have to pay $8,000. I was reading an ad for one in Southern Ontario this morning that the pay was $11,000 to get into the school. And yeah, you talk to these people now about this MELT program, and nobody's too enthusiastic about it. I can tell you that. I guess it's kind of fallen on their faces. But let me ask you this, Nick. If you were a young guy that wanted to get into trucking and you wanted to get the license for trucking, would you be willing to pay between $10,000 and $15,000 just to be able to write the test?
Okay, well, what's the likelihood that I pass?
Well, the good likelihood that you pass.
So what's the moral of the question that you're asking me?
Would you be willing to pay that much money for that license?
Do I already have a job lined up? What does that job pay?
Well, then you've got to go out and look for a job and then realize that starting wages for a truck driver here are around $39,000, $40,000 a year.
So I'd be looking at $15,000 to take away home on my first year.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, like it's poor. You don't start making any serious money in trucking until you've been at it for a long time.
How much was it in comparison to when you started?
Honestly, let me just
better way to word that, what did your first year look like, and when did you start actually being able to?
Like my first year as a company driver, I believe I dragged in 35,000 in 1979.
And how much did you pay on your test?
I didn't have 10. Well, no, that's not true. I paid $10 for my license and an extra $5, I think, for the what they called the chauffeur's license back then. So $15 for the license.
Yeah, it's hard to answer that because I assume most people know about that before they sign up for it.
Yeah, but I just think that's one hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't know if I would put myself in that hole personally right off the bat unless I was damn well committed to making it work. But
yeah, and you've got guys like FJT saying, you know, it's no better than it was before. Like under this system, Nick, I could teach you to drive our truck. You could be really good at it, but you'd still have to go through one of these schools. You couldn't just go write the test. I couldn't just take you down to the MTO and let you do the test.
So why are these schools charging now $15K for a test? Is it just for a money grab?
It's a money grab. It's a money grab.
Yeah, I see. Crumhound with a $10 donation. Thank you very much for that. Penske Logistics made me take the Smith training course. It was poorly written magazine with multiple choice and PowerPoint. I told them I could write and make a better PowerPoint when I was 13. Chromehound coming in with another 10. He was finishing the rest of his statement here. If they cared about training, we'd be appreciated. We'd be apprenticing high schoolers in the passenger seat. Yeah, it seems a little silly to have that level of training without apprenticing.
Who was that? Penske Logistics did that to you. It's unfortunate because the Smith system is a really good system if it's taught well, but it sounds like Penske Logistics has pretty much destroyed it. So, love your description. Appreciate the donation. Oh man, that's good. Z-Bear, I got really lucky and got a grant for 18 to 24-year-olds and saved $8,000 to upgrade my CDL with the endorsements, and that's in Illinois. That is good. That's more reasonable. But you know, like for a brand new guy getting into the industry to be owing $15,000 to the driving school and really being unsure of how to do it, like you know, you can read the road signs. You've already proven that, but like it's not the same as running a loaded trailer down the mountains in the winter.
Yeah. So what was my other question? What does that $15,000 pay for? Do they tell you what that pays for?
Well, the majority of it is in-class training. Now, Ontario lets you drive a truck for 50 hours, which is how you really learn.
And that
by
is
driving
new
the truck.
To the program?
Pardon me?
That's new to the program?
It's not true of all provinces.
No. So
it's new to the Ontario program,
no,
yes.
The question is that new to the $15K introduction? Because you didn't pay $15K, right? So when they slapped on $15,000, do you get anything extra out of the training?
The 50 hours goes with the amount of training, but I didn't pay any. The 15.
So you didn't get the 50 hours of training?
No, I did. I got it from.
That's what I'm asking. Does the $15,000 include anything else in the training package that wasn't already there prior?
No.
So you're just paying an extra $15K for nothing. Yeah, that's a fun industry. Ken Rose, thank you very much for the $2 donation.
Have you seen any of the recent dash cam from California Highway Patrol of a Swift truck sliding down Highway 80 out of control? You know what? Is the Swift truck kind of jackknifed and only doing about 15, 20 miles an hour? Because I did see a video on that. I wasn't sure where it was, but I did see that video. And he's just kind of, the cab's jackknife and the trailer's on about a 45, and he's just kind of sliding easily down the hill. He could probably get out and run beside it if the ground were dry. He's going that slow. Coach Beebe says the ATA strikes again, and that is the problem with driving schools and driving carriers in the States that do training, is because of the ATA, they do not mandate any amount of training in the cab. So they can sit you in a classroom for 4 weeks and teach you what a stop sign means and how to recognize that and how far back to put your triangles. But you don't even actually have to have driven a truck before until they turn you out on the highway. And sometimes, they're doing it with another rookie in the passenger seat, but it's highly inadequate training. And that's thanks to the ATA, because they're just in such a hurry to turn drivers over to start making money with them. I went to a school called Jersey Tractor Trailer Training, and I paid $3,000 so I could learn stick. Unfortunately, I'm the only one in my family to start this. Still, it's $3,000 to learn to drive, and I think everybody should learn to drive the manual transmission, frankly. But like that's a hell of a price difference between the United States and up here. Yeah, Brian McIntyre. The system is a scam. It cost me $6,000. Well, it is a scam, and I don't know. I was going to say I'm sure it was well intentioned by somebody, but the driving schools are laughing all the way to the bank. The only satisfaction you have is that knowing that nobody can afford to pay that now. They're not making any money because they're not getting any students. So, but ridiculous system. But all these new drivers that are coming into Ontario and Quebec are supposed to have had all this training by law, and it's clear that they're not getting any training because they can't drive worth a damn. So not only are you paying for the school, but you have to pay for the exam as well. Yes, Ken. And actually, here's something else funny I read about Ontario. There's another trucking company then that will take you fresh out of driving school and mentor you for another 6 weeks and actually let you drive the truck locally to get the hang of it. And they'll do that, and they'll only charge you like 10 to 20 grand, depending on how bad you are. Like, Jesus. So there's 25, 30,000 to get a license to make, a crap wage for the next 10 years as a new truck driver. Wow. I grew up with a 2-stick Mac curb stomp. That was that wasn't the first truck I drove when I got out of school. I guess it was. Yeah, I drove a 2-stick Mac. 2-stick Mac. But it was a 5 and a 3. Rough old girl. Always started. I learned in a TransStar International. I'm sure you've heard me say that. But yeah, the first truck I really worked was a 2-stick Mac. Mid 1970s sometime. Me and my dad wanted to rent a Peter KW and take my test on my own, but the DMV said I had to take a class, just like Ontario here. My dad was pissed, and that's when we learned they just wanted money. And a lot of it is about money. And even when they want you to renew, you haven't had any accidents, you've been driving for years, and they want you to come in and write the test again. I could live with it if you just say, look, here's the $80 or whatever the hell it costs now. Just take it and don't bother me. But when you come in and have to review what do you do with a stop sign, stuff like that for experienced drivers, it's just a money grab. It's just a waste of time. But a lot of that's just government. Roger says, I hope it gets even more expensive. There's way too many clowns with a CDL putting down pressure on wages. And that's true. And that's been another problem with the diversity in the industry, is because these guys come into the industry, they don't know the cost of living, even where they're living, so they don't know what to expect. They don't know how much money they need to make. They're happy as hell just to get a job. They'll take almost any kind of a wage, because if you're getting paid by the mile, they haven't even figured out how many miles they're going to get, and the delays and the fact that the first 2 hours are free and all that stuff. They haven't figured any of that out yet. So they're just happy to have a job. But it does. The trucking companies see them coming and go, here we can pay this guy a whole lot less than that guy over there that's been here 10 years. And they do that. and they do it all the time. It's common practice in the industry, and it does drive the wages down. Anyhow, so there are problems with the diversity in the industry. I think, and we were talking about this earlier. The part of the problem is that truck drivers used to be a fairly united group in the 60s and 70s. In fact, hell, they literally shut down the states a few times over the price of fuel and things like that when they thought it was getting too high. And but that unity that the trucking community, the truckers had, I think that has all but disappeared now, and I think that's sad. I think it's because it's pinned the wages down. I think it's forced a lot of older guys to just retire, such as myself, because we were used to getting, making a pretty fair wage, and then the cost of everything kept going up, but the wages didn't, because they kept finding drivers that would do it cheaper. So it hurt the industry in all sorts of ways, but it was unintentional on the part of the drivers from overseas. They just needed a job. They had to do whatever they could just to get a job, and the results were unintentional. Look at one of the best examples we have in Canada is that Humboldt accident back in, I think it was 2018. You guys probably know that case where a brand new driver ran a stop sign and hit a Greyhound bus full of hockey players, killed 16 of them, injured 13 others, badly, crippled them for life. Just a complete tragedy. And the guy had only been driving a couple weeks. He'd had no formal training. He'd been with his boss in the truck a couple of times. He had no idea what he was doing, and he had to tarp the load. And, among the other things they didn't teach him was how to tarp. So his tarps were blowing off, and he's looking in the mirror, looking at his tarps blowing off, and runs a stop sign and hits this Greyhound bus. And actually, he missed the stop sign, ran through the intersection, and the bus hit him in the side. And it was a disaster, but just lack of training. That's all that was. Lack of training. And the guy didn't mean to do it. He wasn't being malicious, but it was just he didn't know any better. And that's been a problem so many times with the new diversity that we find in trucking. When I learned to drive, my uncle, who was 20 years old at the time in the 70s, he would smack you if you screwed up on the shift on the head until you learned real fast, like a rap on the knuckles or on the head or something like that. No, you missed that shift, you bugger. That's kind of funny. But yeah, sorry. Craig Beats. Imagine getting to the road test site and the truck fails not once, but twice in a row. The test site instructor looks for anything. First fail was a mud flap, and on a drive. Second was an air leak. Yeah, just some of these guys can be a-holes. I don't know how else to say it. There was a guy up here that had been driving for 45 years. Been driving long time, really good guy. He went in to get retested, all new crew in the MTO test site. They failed him on his circle check. There he was with a loaded trailer, his truck and a loaded trailer. They failed him on his circle check, and that was it. They parked the truck. He lost his license. Took him a year to get it back, and just over a circle check. Some of them can be completely ridiculous. Damn near broke that guy. But anyway, thinking back to that Humboldt accident, that was a bloody awful thing. So it's gotten to the point, I have to admit, and I'm a pretty relaxed, confident driver, but I am to the point now where I'm uncomfortable on the highways around trucks because you don't know the caliber of the guys behind the wheel. And that's a sad statement, but that's kind of where we are now. And there are other factors too, like there's more traffic, even more traffic, which makes it tougher for truck drivers. Some of these guys are so scared of the ELD and running out of hours that they drive like raped apes through traffic, and that's a danger. And they just don't know enough to just relax and kick back and drive safely because they're worried about their hours of service. There's issues. There's no doubt of that.
Merv truck training in Cambridge in the 80s, after they got you a license, would give you a week of hauling actual freight for Hostess potato chips.
What was that guy's name? Merv Orr. Is that the guy? Merv Orr. I remember that. He was a Reimer driver that started the first trucking school that I was ever aware of here in Ontario. And he's a short little guy, nice guy, lots of driving experience. But I didn't know that that's what he did. But well, I'm kind of dating myself there. I bet you, Fred, you remember him. Not that I'm trying to insult you, Fred, but I got you pegged for about the same age as me. Ken Rose, actually in the U.S., he's actually in the U.S. currently studying for the written test to get the CDL. Plan to go to school in Florida. Well, that'd be all right. It's weather is a factor unto itself when you're learning to drive a truck. So if you could get your license in Florida and just run I-10 and 20, like for the first few years until you got the feel of the truck, I think that would be hugely advantageous. And then start worrying about the weather when you got a little more confident with the truck. Just a thought. Matthew Thomas, hey man, thanks for joining us. Glad I could catch the video in time. We are too. Number one dumb thing I see now in the last few years is guys resting their phones on their gauge cluster with movies playing. Good Lord. That is dumb. That's they should just throw guys in jail for that. That's just beat them over the head with a stick and then throw them in jail. Stupid, dangerous buggers. You don't see the wave of these people in the rail and airline industry because you must be fluent in English. NTSB required this internationally many years ago, Coach Beebe. That's a pretty good point. You don't see them in the rail and air industries. Very, very valid point. That takes some thought. That takes some pondering. How come those guys didn't make the same mistake we did? Minnesota kid, 40-degree temperature in winter. I know that's in Minnesota, and we're having an incredibly warm winter this year so far too. It's above freezing. It's been above freezing all week here. So, and we're north of Minnesota quite a bit. Yeah.
Bloody Dead coming in with another tenner. Thank you very much for that. I think the way it should be is if you make one minor mistake, they should fail you on your driving test and teach you that one mistake that could range, that one mistake could range between a ticket, if caught, to you putting someone else's life at risk.
That might not be a bad way to go about it. There's always different circumstances for accidents too, and a lot of truck drivers get into accidents that they didn't cause, a lot of them. So I think there's some consideration for that too, or there should be. Should I pay $7,000 for Roadmaster CDL school with 18% interest? Going to be 11 once I complete, but I have a program to repay it back in full. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Dawn. Roadmasters has been around a long time, and they have a really good reputation. I know a lot of carriers specifically hire from Roadmaster, like Werner's does that. The price I think is reasonable. The interest rate I think is outrageous. 11 grand once you complete it, but you have a program to repay it back in full. How long would that take, I guess I'd want to ask. But, man, I don't like the interest rate. I try to bargain with them on that, but there probably isn't much wiggle room. But it's, I don't know. That's a tough call. Like, I do trust Roadmasters. I'll say that. Wolf Train, and guys have to quit parking on off-ramps before there are more accidents like this bus one. But yeah, Wolf Train, though, if you've been in the States, sometimes depending on where you are, you just can't get anything else. It got to the point where I used to, because of the E-logs, and the ELDs helped me this way, I would start my clock early so I would run out of time at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I didn't get into that situation. But sometimes you get off the dock, late, you're fresh on your hours, you want to go as far as you can, and by 2 or 3 in the morning, it is impossible to get a parking spot, especially if you're east of the Mississippi in a lot of places. So, they've got to build more rest areas is the answer. That's all there is to it. And they're stalling, and they've got excuse, and it's because nobody wants to pony up the money for the real estate and the paving and the lighting and the security, but that's just all that has to happen. But they got to do it. They've had parking issues since the year 2000. Minnesota kid again. 55-degree temperature in South Dakota, Hot Springs, South Dakota. See the new 2025 Volvo, good-looking grill. Yes, I've seen the pictures of the new Volvos, and I like that grill. I'm impressed. On the other side, I saw the new Western Stars, and man, they've made it really ugly for next year with the Western Stars. But I like the look of the new Volvos. I never thought you'd hear me say that, but I do. I park on ramps because it's safer in the truck stops these days. Bloody dead, and he's got a point there too. And it's sad to say, because a lot of these guys can't drive worth a crap. They'll clip you getting into the parking spot like they did with me, or they'll clip you when they're pulling out of the parking spot and turn too soon and wipe out your hood. You can't count on the guy next to you not hitting you anymore. So I can see that argument, especially if you own the truck. We need to stand together and strike when the speed limiters come into play. Man, I could go on for hours about that. It's been the ATA that's pushed these speed limiters, and pretty much all those big fleet ATA trucks are speed governed already. So this is just a move by the ATA to try to hurt the competition, is what it boils down to. And if you've paid the amount of money it costs to have your own truck these days, and you own it, I think you should be the boss of that truck, not the ATA or the FMCSA or anybody else. I don't agree with that speed limiter mandate. It's all right if they set it at 75 or 80 miles an hour, because with a big truck, you really don't want to be going any faster than that, even in like Wyoming, for instance, where the roads are wide open. You lose the steering axle tire, it's gone at 80 miles an hour. But to limit them at like 62 and have the traffic in Wyoming or Arizona just gaining on you leaps and bounds, like California. Somebody told me now that California, the cars can do 70 and the trucks can do 55. That's just an accident waiting to happen. I know a guy who hired driving salt water, and he wrecked the truck the other day, and the driver didn't have a license, and the truck owner didn't have insurance and proper paperwork for the truck. Well, Matthew, the best I can hope for in that situation is that nobody else was involved. Like, I pray to God he didn't hit anybody else, because then there's no money for the victim. It's just the truck and trailer's wrecked and the guy is hurt, that's all on the guy that didn't make sure he had a license, that owned the truck, and that's a gamble he took, and he gets what he deserves in that case. But stupid that people still do that. Is the ATA private? Why would the government listen to them? Because because they're a huge lobby group. They're a lobby group made up of all these huge carriers, the CEOs of the huge carriers. They are so big to the point that they've hired a professional president that is the head of their lobby committee. His name is Chris Spear. He's the head of the ATA. His salary is over $1 million a year, and he doesn't do anything except talk to politicians. So that's the kind of money and power they've got in Washington. They're a huge force in Washington. That's why. And they've got so much power they pretty much control the FMCSA. It's a dirty system. California is talking about putting speed limiters in cars. Really? I hadn't heard that. Boy, the people in California love their cars. I bet you they won't be happy about that. That whole state is based on people being able to drive their fancy cars. Could this new Volvo really save 10% on fuel? Again, I hear so much stuff. Wouldn't Volvo be harder to get serviced? Actually, there's a fair number of Volvo dealerships springing up across the states now. Whether it can really get 10% better fuel mileage will remain to be seen. It doesn't look particularly any more aerodynamic than anything else out there. So unless they've done something with the motor to squeeze it down for fuel consumption or something, the time will tell. They can all get 9 miles to the gallon on the test track. I like doing 95 kilometers an hour and let the crazies pass me. My truck can go fast enough if I want it to, but 95, I get the best fuel mileage. So for the American guys here, that's, what is that? Not 50-something miles an hour. 57 miles an hour. So that's what 95 kilometers an hour is. And yeah, they used to claim that the long hood trucks like mine could get the same fuel mileage as the Volvos at 60 miles an hour. But the faster you drove, the more the long hood trucks would lose in fuel mileage.
All right, chat. Well, it's getting to be that time of night again, so I'll take a couple more questions here and then let Dave wrap things up for the evening. Any final pointers?
Here's Curb Stomp. Volvo can be serviced at any Mack dealer. That's right, because they're in cahoots. Or did Volvo actually end up buying out Mack or bought shares in Mack? There's some connection there now, because when I think about the dealership in the city south of us, they both share a lot for sales and service and stuff. So that's right. Would anyone here really miss politicians? I doubt it. No, I don't think I would. I know for sure, Jimmy, I wouldn't miss any politicians. Politicians have done so much damage to the trucking industry. I could go on for days. So I'm the wrong guy to ask about that. I drive 68 miles an hour and I still get passed by like 90% of the trucks. Yeah. No, I used to like to sit at 65 miles an hour and everybody passed me. It's just, but if you tried to keep up with the crowd, you'd go broke paying the fuel bill. So I don't know, maybe these are, company trucks before they've been set from small carriers or something, but yeah, I sympathize. I used to get passed all the time. Your Stabs, they came out with a 17.3 780 horse power engine. Have you seen, who is it, Stabs? I think it's the Scania now with this XXXL bunk or cab. Have you seen that thing? Pictures of that? What a wild looking thing that is. It's beautiful. I think, man, they really got something there. I don't know if you're seeing any of them, but I've seen pictures of them, like from off the internet anyway, at the dealerships and stuff. But cool looking trucks. Anyways, I should wrap it up, I guess. But thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it all the time. Love talking with other truck drivers. It's we used to be able to get together in the evening and sit around the table at the truck stops for dinner and stuff like that and shoot the breeze. And this is kind of the modern equivalent of that. So I really enjoy it. I hope you guys too. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to stay tuned for our Friday video, and stay safe. Keep the rubber side down.
I just want to take a second here to thank all our donors for today. The Bloody Dead, Jonathan, Chromehound, and Ken Rose. Thank you to everyone who generously donated today. And even if you didn't donate, thank you for coming out and participating in this evening's chat.
Yep. Thank you to everybody. Oh, hell, my memory's gone. But anyway, Bloody Dead. I feel your pain on waiting for the truck. I know it's going to be a long wait for you. So, Johnny Quest, thanks, Dave. Thank you, guys. Take care. Have a good night. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the backhaul. Good night, everybody.